Springtime bass fishing means fishing around the spawn. It's all centered around the spawn. It's all about that. So in the early part of the spring, you're talking pre-spawn. You get the water temperature gets around that 60-degree mark. Now you're talking spawn. And then when you get beyond that, you're talking post-spawn. So how do you go about fishing those? Because the conditions change so fast and so do the fish. You can't fish it the same way throughout the whole spring. So let's break it down here. Pre-spawn, I'm talking about when the water temperature gets in that upper 40s, right around the 50-degree mark. Those fish are just coming up out of the winter, deep areas, and they're starting to get active. A couple key things about that. First of all, they're not going to be super shallow. They're going to be in somewhere between the deep water and those spawning flats. Now, the best way to find it is kind of work yourself backwards. Where are the spawning areas that they're gonna be at? So there's a hard bottom, flat areas that got some protection to it. Those are the areas you wanna look for, and then back your way out of it a little bit. That's deeper areas, and I'm talking 10 to 15 foot deep, 8 to 15 foot deep. That's where they're gonna start staging and getting ready to spawn. So earlier, that 50-degree mark, they're gonna be in that deeper area, 15 foot, maybe 20 foot. Reaching them can be a little bit difficult, so jigs is what I would use for that, and Texas rig soft plastics. Right there in the very beginning. And here you're just dragging on the bottom and giving little hops and twitches, but working them fairly slow through those like main lake points and some secondary points, humps, ridges, those steep rocky banks. Those are the areas that, I call them transition banks, those steep areas. That's what the bass are going to use as kind of a highway as they move up into the shallow areas. Those are areas I would target. As the water warms up and gets to those mid 50s, now you can move up with them. You can go to a little bit more of a sloping type bank. You can go to those docks, weed lines, any kind of flooded bush and timber. What I like to do is if I got an area where there's some flooded bushes that's on a ridge or a drop, right adjacent to a drop that drops down to 7 to 12 feet deep, they'll get right up on it. Even though it's in 4 foot deep or so, they'll get right up in there because it's right adjacent to deep water. Those are areas to target as well. Docks, similarities, same type of thing. You got a creek channel that comes right up along the docks. That's a great place to fish. Gives them cover in shallow water, but quick access to deep water. And so I'd be using crankbaits then. Lipless crankbaits are really dynamite right now in that time of year. Crawdad colored ones. So a lot of times the bait fish, that's what the bass are feeding on bait fish, but the crawdads become more active this time of year than they've been all winter long, and so the bass start to target that as well. So that becomes a staple in their diet. So crawdad color crankbaits work really well. Speaking of bait fish, jerk baits, suspending jerk baits work exceptionally well. Deep diving ones to begin with, the ones that get below 10 foot deep in those deeper areas I just mentioned, twitch it and work it slowly to that key area like a point or a sunken rock pile, and then let it sit there and hover and give it little subtle twitches. And that's oftentimes what it takes to get those big pre-spawn bass to bite them. So it works very, very well. As the spring progresses and the temperature warms up, you can work those baits faster and move to shallow or medium diving jerk baits and continue to catch them that way. Spinner baits also are a good thing to fish during the pre-spawn. Again, the deeper in the very beginning, deeper areas, you want to slow roll that. I'm using a 3/4 ounce, sometimes a single Colorado blade or a double Indiana blade spinner bait, just white with a white trailer, so it's a shad or a bait fish kind of color. Slow rolling along those deeper areas and deeper banks and sharper banks earlier in the spring, and then as we get closer to the spawn, I start to bring those back at a clip and pace and along docks and along cover, weed lines, type of things like that. And a lot of times you can get those aggressive fish with those baits. So like those are the main things that I'm fishing in pre-spawn. When you get to spawn, yeah, you see the beds. It's usually a clear circular area that's lighter than the rest of the bottom. Sometimes they're not easy to find. Sometimes they're hidden up under cover and right up against things that are difficult to see. They conceal themselves very well. Just because a bass is on his bed does not mean he's easy to catch. It often takes repeated casts over and over and over again to figure out what's going to get them to bite. Every bass has its own personality. It's kind of like a cat or dog or a horse. If you've ever had them, you know that they all have their own little personality quirks Bass are the same way, especially when on a bed. What gets one bass to trigger and bite that lure, you go to the next bed, it's not going to work for that bass. So you've got to figure him out and what's going to trigger him. That's part of the challenge and the fun of fishing bedded bass. And I like to use Texas rig plastics for this reason, because they're typically in areas where you can get snagged. So a Texas rig tube or a Texas rig lizard works really well. Texas rig rage bug, that's kind of a bluegill profile to it, and those are nest raiders. Those three baits are what I'm using the most when I'm fishing for bedded bass. The key thing when you're fishing bedded bass is when you catch them, photograph them, weigh them, and then let them go. Let them get back to that bed so they can continue doing their thing and they can finish the spawn process, so you've got plenty of fish for the years to come. Don't keep them. If you're out there meat fishing, don't target bedding bass, please, because you're doing a lot of harm to the fishery by doing that. So just have fun, catch them, and then let them go. Post-spawn is kind of a weird period. You've got this immediate funk, a post-spawn funk right after they spawn, where the majority of the fish are just, they're recuperating. They're tired from the spawn, they haven't been eating, they haven't been feeding much, so they're recuperating and they're not very aggressive. So during that period, I'm throwing stick baits, yum dingers, flukes, Senkos, real slow moving weightless baits, wacky rigged or Texas rig. That seems to be like the killer bait during that post-funk. That post-funk only lasts a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks at the most, not very long. So it's a short period, but sometimes that's the only thing they're gonna bite is a slow moving weightless plastic bait. Right after that though, is when they put the feed bag on. Now they're hungry. Hey man, I gotta eat. And they go crazy. They start biting a lot of baits. Plus you've got fry guarders. You've got males that are now guarding these balls of fry that have hatched, and they're aggressive. They're gonna protect those fry. So topwater baits. These bass can be very aggressive on topwater. So buzz baits, walking baits, prop baits, poppers, frogs. Frogs can be very good right now because those fry are going to go up into cover. They're going to, they naturally go to areas where they can get some protection. So they're going to go into weeds. They're going to flooded bushes, timber, up under docks and dock pilings. Bringing a frog over the top of them or a buzzbait over the top of them often elicits a strike from those fry guarders. And again, same with bedding bass. If you catch a fry garter, let him go, so he can do his job, because if he's not there to protect those fry, predators will come up and eat him, and all that spawning process will be for nothing. So I'll make sure you let him go. Those bigger females, they're gonna move off a little bit deeper. You're gonna find them where the spawning areas were, that next deeper drop, that cover that's in the next layer of deeper water. So in that 5 to 10 foot zone, maybe 5 to 12 foot zone, you can find a weed line there, deeper dock pilings, rock piles, scattered chunk rock, docks, maybe there's a creek channel that comes along there. That deeper area, that's where the females are going to be hanging out. And I like to, again, top waters are really good for them, but crankbaits, spinner baits, chatterbaits, those are the things I target for those bigger females. That's really what I want to go after in this post-spawn period. Another couple key things to consider in post-spawn is that now that the bass are done spawning, other species will start spawning. Bluegill in particular. Bluegill beds are easy to spot. They do it out in the open, and they're right near each other. So you got like these little, dinner-sized plate spawning beds, and they'll be like craters all over like an open area. That's bluegill. If you look very carefully, you'll find a little bluegill sitting in the middle of them. Well, if there's cover nearby, man, the bass got cover and they got food. They're not going anywhere. Like some people think right after the spawn, the bass all scatter out of the shallows and they're gone, they're in deep water. Those bluegill are spawning, those bass are gonna hang out and feed on those bluegill. So fishing bluegill imitator baits is really good. Again, those topwaters work really well too. Another phenomenon that happens in a post-spawn period is the shad spawn. The shad start spawning, they shad at night, they spawn at night. and into the early morning hours. So when you go out there fishing, this is a good time to get out there at the crack of dawn, and you can catch the shad spawn. All those bass are up shallow, feeding on those shad very aggressively. So a crankbait, a shad style crankbait or spinnerbait can be very, very productive in that first hour or two of dawn before the sun gets really up in the air. And you can get a lot of fish. So a lot of times you can get up there, get up early, launch right at the crack of dawn, fish those first couple of hours and catch a boatload of bass, and then put your boat back up on the trailer and go home and do yard work, whatever it is you want to do. Go to the ball game with the kids, do what you want to do, and you can have yourself a great day. You don't have to spend all day on the water fishing, because the bite does slow down considerably after the shad spawn's done. If you like to stay out all day, knock yourself out. But I'm just saying, sometimes you can, if you want to get in a few hours of good fishing, that early morning bite can be really good in post-spawn period. So make sure you take advantage of it. So that's how you attack the spawn during the springtime. You just break it down. That spawn is that inflection point, and break the spring down into mini seasons, and you can be a lot more productive and catch a lot more fish. I hope that helps. For more tips and tricks like this, visit bassresource.com.